guys. Welcome back to the Addictively Speaking podcast. We are back with another edition, and I have a guest. Her name is Deanna Marie. She's a life coach that specializes in women who are in a relationship with an alcoholic or addict. And she's here today to talk to us about all of that. So, Deanna, welcome to the podcast, and tell us about yourself. Tell us about who you are.
And how I got here, huh?
That's right.
Well, thank you, James, first of all, for having me. Again, yes, my name is Deanna, and I actually came into this world through my lived experience of living with an alcoholic for over 20 years ago. And that was back, I've been away from that relationship for 18 years now. And during that time, you know, I loved my husband. I saw the good in him. We were building a great life together. But once my first son was born, you know, I noticed that this problem was even bigger than I had thought. It was no longer just partying on the weekends. It was constant partying. And then there was no subsiding, even though we had these additional responsibilities. So I went to Al-Anon, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners or wives or partners of your listeners have been involved in. And then I went to therapy too. And although those are very useful resources, it was just not a place where I felt comfortable in. It's like in Al-Anon, I just felt like there was nobody I could really reach out to. And the demographic was a little different than I was at that time, being in my 30s. And with therapy, that was great. And it helped me realize like how I got to this point in this relationship, recognizing that I actually ended up marrying my father, which is, I'm sure, something that a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah.
And, but from there, it didn't take me where like, okay, so now that I know this, how can you help me now in this relationship? Because I didn't want to leave. I'm like, I got here. Okay, but help me. Tell me what to do. And therapy is not for that, right? They're here to work on past trauma. And that's why coaching really excited me, because coaching helps take you from where you are today as a functional being, getting up, going to work, doing your things, and just guiding you to a better life. And so that's a little bit about me and how I'm here. So.
All right. So you said you had a child. The partying didn't stop. Were there any? Did there any indications like prior to this, or you just kind of thought like maybe the drinking was too much, or was it because you were young? It wasn't really. You kind of just thought like, oh, we're in our 20s. This is what people in their 20s do. They just drink and they have fun. Was there any ever inkling that you thought like maybe there was a problem prior to the first child, or not really?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question, because in self-reflection, I had to be honest with myself. When me and my partner, my husband, started dating way back in the beginning, in the early days of our courtship, there were a couple of times he was supposed to be either at my apartment or wherever, and he wasn't because he was out drinking with his buddies. And at that time, I saw the flags, but I just looked away because I'm at the end of the baby boomer generation. And it's like, so my friends are getting married in their 20s, and I should have been married in my 20s.
Yeah.
And, you know, this seemed like the nice guy. And he was a nice guy. He was a successful guy. I mean, he loved family. And so he checked all the boxes. So I just went forth, not really trusting myself, knowing there's something else wrong here. And because of my fear of being alone, or maybe not being accepted by where society thought I should be going, as opposed to what I should be doing, I did look away. And I think I find a lot of women have done that too.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, some of your clients and stuff like that, I imagine they have similar things where it's like they feel like this is where I should be, this is the person I should be with. Did you, in the beginning, did you think, you know, like once some things started happening where you thought, oh, this could be a problem, did you ever think to, like, did you guys have conversation? Was there anything ever brought up where you're like, maybe you have a problem, or maybe I'd like you to drink less, and like what kind of conversations were they and how did they go?
I think another excellent question. Yes. And I think, but at that time, being uneducated on how the best way to approach my partner. Yelling, screaming,
Yeah.
pleading, begging, and threatening to leave was
Yeah.
not working. So I'd say to all your listeners who are doing that, just stop doing that. That is not what you need to do. It's like there's a certain way you need to approach your partner. There's a certain tonality you need to have with your partner. And from there, you can communicate your true needs. But to really answer your question, yeah, of course, I yelled and I screamed and I cried and I begged, but they were all empty threats, right? And
Yeah.
he just kept drinking and I kept staying and we would go around until the last, until the next time, until the next
Right.
bender, until the next blowout.
So it was like you were just trapped in this vicious cycle that you guys were going through, where you would say, "I had enough of this shit," and then he'd say, "I don't give a shit," and then it would kind of go back around and around and around
Right,
again.
right.
Okay. So you've had a child.
Mm-hmm.
How was he as a father when you had your first child? Like what was that like? Because these are usually like things that like wake people up, isn't it? Like, oh, I have a child now. I need to
Yeah.
start changing. I need to do things a little different. Like, what was his approach then after
Yeah,
that?
and I have to tell you, he loved family. He was from a big family. He was excited about us having a family. And we had
Mhm.
our first son, and he was so happy. And he was always a hands-on father from the start. I mean, the thing is though, too, James, and I think like they're they're these people are not they're not bad people. They are wonderful, kind, loving, giving people who just have an addiction to alcohol.
Mhm.
And the problem with being a partner of an alcoholic is you see that truth in them. And so you're always hoping that eventually they'll see it.
Yeah.
And so that's why we stay. But to answer your question, he was a great father, but he had this addiction. He got a DWI 3 months after our first son. And then within the year, he got another one. And that's when I really realized, holy Moses, this problem is bigger than the both of us. And so what did I do? At that time I was uneducated. Like I said before, I yelled and screamed, and I just stayed for another 9 years until I finally said enough is enough.
You stayed for another 9 years. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to been it's a long road, and you're just traveling in this vicious circle. It seems like. So
Yeah.
after the second, you got 2 DUIs in a year. Any
Hmm.
jail time with that? Was there anything, or was it just fines and like uh, anything? Like, because I know, so I guess it depends on what state you're in. Because when I was in Pennsylvania, if you had
Yeah.
2 DUIs within a 10-year period or something, you went up for
Well,
jail time, 30 days or something.
I will tell you, fortunately, it was before all the rules changed. I live in New York State.
Okay.
And he was on the verge of absolutely just losing his license.
Mm,
Now he would get jail time. And he had a good career. Like, he was a functional alcoholic. He got up every day, he went to work, he did his things. But now, and he was the primary breadwinner at that time. And now
right.
our livelihood was in jeopardy. And still, that was just not enough. We paid the money and got out of it, and life went on as life went on.
Yeah. That seems to be the case when people are in those type of situations. That if you get out of it and you continue to keep going in that same trajectory,
Yeah.
um, you kind of just feel like, wow, well, it's just a DUI, just another
Yeah.
DUI. I
It's
just
only
got
$10,000. What does it
just
matter?
a,
I mean,
well,
we're a
it's just a,
young family. We don't have
yeah,
$10,000. That's like
yeah.
every last drop we had. But still, it
Hmm.
wasn't enough. Like, okay, well, let's just keep going.
Wow. Okay. So you have a second child as well.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. How far down the how far between first and the second? How many years?
3 years. 3 years.
3 years between them. Okay.
Yep, 3 years between it. Because, and it all has to do with the fact of, in hindsight now, that I was still holding on to the dream. I have
Hmm.
to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, we were at that point, I had grown in my career, he was growing in his career. We started accumulating the things, you know,
Yeah.
and life from the outside looked good. And I just really kept thinking that, you know, he'll realize it. He won't want to lose all of this. Look at how well we're doing. And so we had another son and we kept on trudging along and until, another 6 years after that, I was just like,
Did
I can't do it anymore.
did you also like want to believe the lies you were telling yourself? Like the it look at all the pretty things we have. Look at all the nice stuff we have. It's okay. It's gonna be okay. Like is that the type of is that like the mind frame that you were in? Because on the outside, it's like with social media today, everybody puts up all the happy stuff that they're
Yeah,
doing, all the
yeah,
good stuff. Oh, I'm on a trip. Oh, I'm here. Like
yeah.
because the outside looks really nice, but the inside could be a shithole. And you just did you start at one point just like believing that like yeah, it'll get better, or he'll see that you could lose all this. You don't want to lose all this. Like,
It's absolutely a mind game. It's
mm,
absolutely a mind game because even though I had those thoughts that eventually he'll see or look how well we're doing, it's always there's always that voice inside of you that everyone should listen to, like, this is not right. This
mm,
is just, we're just off here.
yeah,
And again, now that I've been out of it so long, it's like it was all based from fear, and not just fear of just leaving the relationship. It's just like
yeah,
losing the things, and that keeps you stuck longer, like losing the things. And then
mm,
emotionally, will anybody else ever love me? Like, he loves me. Will I ever find love again? Will I ever be
yeah,
able to have a nice house like this again? Because right now I can't afford it on my own. Like,
yeah.
how will it be for my two boys, removing them out of this, nuclear
Bad
unit right
situation.
now? And
Yeah,
it just keeps you stuck in fear. So you keep telling yourself, it'll get better. He'll realize, but deep down inside, that's not the truth. But you just pray to God every day that he will see the light and he will see the person that he can be,
yeah.
but for some reason they just don't show up.
So you're talking about the fear. So you're
Hmm.
living in fear. It is like you're trapped in a cage, aren't you? You're in
Yeah.
this cage of fear and outside perception as well. If it does
Yep.
fall apart, what are people going to think? You have friends, you have a family
Yep.
unit. I'm sure your kids,
Yep.
you have all these people that you know.
Yep.
How does that look? What does that look like? What does it talk now? There's going to be,
Yep.
gossip and stuff like that. But I think one of the things you said that was quite important is that you knew something was off. And,
Hmm.
do you tell people now, like, follow your gut, follow that instinct inside of you? If you feel like there's a problem, look for help, look to find help.
And that's absolutely really the whole point of my program is I
Mm,
really try to get women and men, I actually have male clients too, to
mhm,
just trust themselves. I think we all know in life, whether it's addiction or buying a new car or buying a new house, we always have that gut feeling like this
mhm,
isn't really what I should be doing. And we don't do it. But when you're in a relationship, that affects so many other dynamics, especially the children and then the family members and everything, you tend to just, talk yourself into it instead of recognizing and getting yourself out of it.
mm.
And it's all about just honoring what you know to be true that's in your heart and just trusting the feelings and energy in your body. I know that sounds a little woo woo, but I think that everybody in life can say you got a gut reaction of when it's going to be good and when it's going to be bad. And so just go with what feels right.
Okay. So I want to ask, because I mean, obviously, when you get married, you're around his family and your family and things
Mhm.
like that. Anything? I mean, did his family ever say anything to you that they thought it was a bit that he had a problem, or did your family ever say anything to you? Because I know, like, you know, in family situations, you know, family Christmases or family Thanksgivings, or when you're out or barbecue at the house, you know, throwing a couple
Hmm.
back. Did he ever get too, you know, wobbly in front of family for them to ever say anything to you about it?
Yes, and I think my pattern follows what a lot of young couples patterns follow, is they usually dictate to one side of the family or the other. And in my case, it was mine, because
Mm,
I was closer to my family than he was.
mm,
Um, so yes, they were more exposed to his behavior. Yes, they did recognize things, but even though they all kind of alluded to it, nobody ever really
nobody ever came out.
came out and said anything to it. It's
Mm.
about it. My mother, after the fact, said to me, "I knew it all along, but I just needed you to figure it out." And I'm like, because I married my father, and she recognized it from where she sat,
Mm.
but I didn't recognize it as the daughter. And then only until after I was like, oh, I hate to admit it, but moms are usually right.
Yeah, the crazy thing about moms is they usually absolutely nail it every single
Yes.
time. And and you know what? It's a funny thing that, like you said, like she after the fact she came out and told you,
Yeah.
like, oh, I knew the whole time. And you
Mhm.
know, you just want to be like, well, thanks. You could have said something. And she's like, I wanted you to figure it out on your own. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for
Yeah.
letting me suffer for 10, 12 years now
Yeah.
when you knew from the beginning. Well done. Thanks, mom.
But let's
That's
face it.
moms.
Yeah, but let's face it, James, if your mom told you and my mom
Oh
told me,
yeah,
we would both been like, you don't know what you're
absolutely.
talking about.
Listen, I can't tell you how many times my mom looked me dead in the face and was like, "Jimmy, I really need you to stop drinking.
Yeah.
You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to hurt." And I just, you know, went about
Yeah.
my business. You know, I didn't even bat an eye. You know, I felt bad,
Yeah.
but that was soon washed away. You know,
Mhm.
so yeah, obviously, yeah, she could have said whatever she wanted. She could have just, you know, she could have droned on at you probably for weeks and weeks, and you still would have been like, "But listen, we
Yeah.
can fix this."
Yeah.
So once it's all over,
Mhm.
how did that all play out? What was that situation? How did
Ac-
you how did it happen?
Actually, mine is a little different than some people, but in the end, they're all similar, I guess. Is how it ultimately ended is my husband went on his third week-long bender. So he had done it right after our kids were
Mm-hmm.
1 and 3 was the first time, and then he had done it again like a couple years later, and then he had done it a third time, the
Mm-hmm.
third and final time. He just went out and never came back. And he did at that point come back and ask, let's work this out again. All the things, I'll stop drinking, I'll be better, I'll do this and that. But because I did go to therapy and because I did read the books and I became stronger along the
Mm-hmm.
way, I learned what I needed to do for me. And I was no longer like looking to him to save our family. I was saving our
Mm.
family. That I was just like, the biggest obstacle I had to get over. I will admit this, good or bad. I would I was afraid that nobody else would love me was ultimately it. And I said, I had gotten to the point, it was like, I would rather be alone for the rest of my life than ever have to deal with this crap again. And, um, and that was it. Like I was just at that point. And so when he came back, I was like, not mad. I wasn't even mad. It's like, this is just come to a close.
Yeah,
This
it was
chapter.
relief, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. There were, because I had done the work. I wasn't angry. I wasn't resentful. I wasn't longing for the dream anymore. I wasn't worried about parceling down all our properties and what house I would live in. Like, I just had reconciled with it all because I just wanted peace and stability in my life. And that's all that mattered. And so when he did, it was just like, no, I just can't do this anymore. I want you to be healthy for our boys. I hope you'll get the help, but I just can't do it anymore.
Honestly, like the way you said that, it sounds like such a powerful moment for you, you
Yeah.
know, to make that decision, like to really own it and want it, and because that's a scary step to take. You're now going to leave your husband, you're going to
Yeah.
take your two kids, and
Yeah.
you're going to forge out on your own,
Yeah.
because you've had enough.
Yeah.
Um, and I imagine that's how it plays out for a lot of people. And I'm
Yeah.
sure it plays out. It doesn't play out for a lot of people as well, that they don't get to that moment that you hit where you did all that work and
Mhm.
you got strong in yourself and you knew that that was it. That was enough. What
And you know
was
what,
what?
James?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry to interrupt you.
No, go
And
ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
want to I want to speak to that because I'm so glad that you brought that up. Because in my coaching program, that's the place I want to take my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being, if I had said no from a place of anger, guilt, fear, or worry, I
Mm-hmm.
would always be looking over my shoulder about, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or was that the right move? Or, I don't know if I want to go dating, and will anybody even want to date me? And, maybe I can't afford it financially, and all the things. You have to feel clear and just so certain in your abilities and feel strong within yourself in order to make that move, to really move on.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're just always looking back. So, and that is one thing I really strive for all the women in my program, and men. And men.
Yeah. To me, it sounds like the moment I decided, like when I was going to quit drinking. Like you come to that moment of strength where you've processed all this shit. You've
Mhm.
realized you're clear. I don't feel any way other than that I need to fix what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, that's amazing. Like such a powerful moment, and I think that's great that that's what you're giving your clients, is that
Mhm.
you're taking them to a place of power and strength, because you're going to need that to move forward.
Yeah.
You're going to need that to build the new life you're setting out to build now.
Yeah.
So when you did leave, what did that look like, and how did you move forward? How did you keep moving forward for your family?
Um, well, I think the biggest thing was, well, fortunately for me, I did not have to leave our home
Hmm.
because we had enough resources, and we had enough resources that I didn't need to do that. Um, so that was also really important to me. And I think my husband understood, I would have fought to the finish about keeping the stability for my children as much as
Yeah.
possible. But it was hard. I mean, there's there's no getting around it. I mean, and I tell my clients this, that first year, it's horrible.
Hmm.
It's absolutely horrible. It's emotional, it's scary, it's overwhelming, it's stressful, but at least at the end of the day, it's stable and
Hmm.
peaceful. And all of that stress and worry is brought on by me and not by someone who is just bringing it all into the house and living in this unpredictability. It's hard. It's like I remember, you know, the addition I got. Oh, now one of the problems is like now I got to mow the lawn every week. It's another thing on my to-do list, right? It's like, and now I have two boys in baseball, and now I got to bring them both places as opposed to you take one, I take the other. But these are the things that you get bogged down. As silly as it seems, these are
Hmm.
the things you get bogged down in. And I will tell you too, though, James, my situation was also expedited, and I had more and less pressure, and I'll explain in a second. Is
Okay.
because my my ex-husband or husband at the time, he moved to another state 6 months after we separated. So
Wow.
five states away.
Oh God. You
Yeah.
got out of Dodge.
Yeah. So he left. He totally left. And I will say, as difficult it was a blessing in the end
Yeah.
because I didn't have to worry about is he going to pick him up for Little League practice
Yeah.
or is he not? Because I knew if I sent somebody on my, on my dime, that person was going to show up for my son. And I
Yeah.
didn't have to rely on him anymore. It was hard. It was a lot of work. I think about it now. I don't know some days how I did it. I remember before we had telephones with calendars, when I hung the calendar on the wall, I would write all the kids' baseball schedules, and I honestly would hyperventilate. Like, how can I do this? How can I do the practices? And how can I do the games? And how can I do my life? And I had a professional job where I traveled at times, and like, how?
Wow.
But you know
Wow.
what? You know what it is? And it's like everything. And I'm sure it's just like your recovery. You get
Mm.
up, you put on your pants, and you just take one step at a
At
time.
a time. Yeah,
And and
absolutely.
yes, when it gets overwhelming, and I'm sure it did for you too during your own recovery, it's just
Hmm.
like you just let it override you, get it up and get it out, and then you just take that next step and do that next thing to get you to the next place. And that's how I got through it. And the blessing part of it was, like I said, I have a lot of clients now who are dealing with co-parenting and they're scared to death. Are they going to drive with
Mm.
them drunk? Are they going to, show up for when they're supposed to? I planned a
Yeah.
weekend with my girls this weekend. It's his weekend. Is he going to change his plans? I didn't have any of
Mm.
that. I knew exactly what was going on. And I will tell you, uh, as a spouse of an alcoholic, for your listeners, if they're in addiction, this is the things that your wife worries about for you. Are you
Mm.
going to be there for them, even if you have left the house, even if you have moved
Right.
out and gotten divorced and you're still struggling with addiction? you know those children still need you. They still need you. And so try to be there for them. That's all I can offer up, but in a
Wow.
positive way, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're gonna be there
Be there.
sober. Be there for them
Right.
because they don't need you to be there drunk. They don't need you to miss their practice because you got too drunk to show up. Like
Yes.
that causes damage, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I was gonna ask, like, because he moved, I imagine that made life 10 times easier because, like you said, you knew what you were dealing with. You
Yeah.
were responsible. You don't have to worry about that. Do you find that? I imagine you don't find that very often in your coaching. I imagine it's a lot more working with people who are trying to co-parent and figure out what that situation looks like and how, as a mother or as the father, and how they're going to deal with that and worry about the anxieties of, is he going to show up drunk? Is he going to pick them up drunk? Is he, what is the situation going to be? Do you find that more common in your coaching? Is that's the case and not like your situation?
I haven't, I'll be honest with you. The clients that I have the resources to coach, which a lot
Mm.
of people don't. I'm just going to be honest. But the women that I talk to in my free workshops and in my Facebook group, and just that I chat, and if there's any women out there listening, please just send me a message. I will respond. I guarantee. If you send me a direct message, I will respond to you. And not just once and tell you to get a call and, let's work together. I will talk to you and help you with your problem. So, but that being said, yes, I'm fortunate. I had the resources. My clients have the resources, but that is one of the biggest issues because it's part of in alcoholism. You, the alcoholic, and I don't know if you ended up doing this, James, but you want your partner to be dependent on you. Like you don't want them out talking to Susie because Susie thinks that you're not doing everything that you're supposed to do, or you're doing too much of what you shouldn't do, or your family. And so you say, well, you try to minimize them. Well, why do you want to go out with Susie? She's terrible anyways, and you just try to keep them closer to you. Why do
Mm.
you have to go out? We don't have any money, even though they've spent probably $100 in the bar. Or,
Yeah.
this was the night that I thought we were going to do something together. And they just try to either deflect, oh, you don't love me anymore. Now you're going to go out, shopping, and they just try to keep them as codependent as possible. And
Mm.
and with that, it's like that's where the finances come in, because a lot of these moms aren't working anymore. They'll say, be a
Right.
stay-at-home mom. You know, I want you to
Yeah,
be a
I'll take care
stay-at-home
of you.
mom.
I'll take
I'll
care
take
of you. I'll
care of
take care
you.
of everything. Yeah.
I'll take care of everything. And who
Mm.
doesn't want to hear that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Until they don't,
Yeah.
until until they're, losing their job,
Yeah.
or, or just,
Or they wreck the car because they're too drunk
oh,
and they drive into something and smash it to pieces. Now you're out of
exactly.
the vehicle.
Someone just texted me the other day, direct messaged me. Her husband took the car and totaled her car. And then her question to me is, why can't I stop loving him? I mean, that's a lot to unpack. But the reason
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
there's so many. I mean, I don't know her. She's not my client. But my guess is just like, either she's stuck in the dream,
Yeah.
or she has
Or
no place to
fear.
go, or she has
Yeah.
fear of financial issues. I mean, it could be a plethora
Yeah.
of
Tons of
underlying
things.
fears. Yeah.
Mm.
But she also mentioned that he had been in jail more times than they had been together. But
Wow.
we
I mean,
kind of
that's not a red flag. I mean, Jesus.
but the sad thing is, James, these people are just living their lives. They think the best that they can,
Mm.
and they can't see the forest from the trees. They just can't, based on their past family history of therapy, or and how they feel about themselves. So I'm here to just push them through and tell them, there's more to life than this. This is not something that you have to really live through and endure.
Mm. So after you guys split and everything was over and he left, moved 5 states, um, you have two little boys. They're
Mhm.
growing up. He's is he present at all? Does he have any relationship with the kids? And how has that affected them? Because I know this, not having a father figure is can be troubling for a child, especially two boys. How did you deal with it and help them through that? Because
Well, it's interesting, and I just thought about something that I should have answered earlier when I was thinking about the boys. But
hmm,
um, when my husband and I first separated, one of the things that was a tough struggle for me was my older son, who had an incredible friend relationship, playing PlayStation and ball and being buddies with each other,
hmm,
really took it out on me. Like, after
uh,
they left,
uh,
rage. Like, not
hmm,
every day, but just that overall frustration, because he just couldn't
yeah,
process how this dad, who, like, would, the PlayStation was the big thing back then. They would always go downstairs and play PlayStation together, and then sometimes they would play wiffle ball together.
hmm,
Things that he could easily drink at. But the kid doesn't care. They're just like, my dad's paying attention to me.
yeah, and they're not seeing the whole picture.
They're
They're
not
just
seeing
seeing
the whole
that
thing.
they're just spending time with dad, aren't they? They don't know. Like you
No,
said, he can easily sit down and drink beers while he plays the PlayStation or hit
right,
the wiffle ball, throw a ball back and forth in the garden. You can always be
right,
kicking them
right.
back.
Yeah. So that was an issue early on, more so for my older son than my younger son, because my
Okay.
younger son, he was 8 and my older son was 11 at the time. And now
Yeah.
my kids are 26 and 29.
Hmm.
So to answer your question, they both went to college. Um, my younger son went to school in Florida,
Hmm.
and the University of Tampa. And my my boyfriend now, we call each other husband and wife. We've been together 15 years, but my boyfriend now, he's the one who helped move him in. He's the one, we're the ones who took him to school. Like, his father
Right.
wasn't there. And that same son, my younger son, has since been in Tampa for 6 years, from college, and now after college, he's graduated.
Hmm.
And my ex has never been to Tampa to see him. So they literally have absolutely no relationship. All holidays are spent with me. And my older son, he actually got engaged in December. So he's
Hmm.
starting to really appreciate like family and life
Yeah.
and how and the important things, that
Hmm.
20-year-old, like I'm gonna take over the world, I'm gonna make $1 million has kind of slowed down, and his perception of like, there's more to money and things and the important things. And family is really big to him. My point being is that he's really tried to reach out to his dad, but he also recognizes, his father's limitations. And so he makes his own words, the visit short, just because he wants to be there, because he's afraid his dad will die sometime and he just wants to have some type of relationship. And that's the truth. So,
It's nice. It's nice that you're like like you're not resentful and you don't have any like
no,
you're letting those moments happen because they your kids are adults now and they can make those decisions
yeah,
to see him and to have that time, and you're not like saying no, he's a drunk, and like he's obviously you've recognized that he's going through some shit and he doesn't know
yeah,
how to actually he's never tried to change. He is who he is right
mhm,
now.
yeah,
Um, and whatever moments he has with his kids they're probably important to him. You know, I imagine they
absolutely.
are. I imagine they are. So it's good that you're not, vindictive or cruel about it. That you moved in such a positive way
Mhm.
that you're allowing that stuff to happen. And I think that's great because it shows the character of who you are. um, and it obviously it probably radiates through when you're coaching, that you're teaching people these skills to just be, that somebody's going through some shit, and
Yeah.
you don't have to be with them anymore, but you don't have to hate them either. You just have to be better for yourself and be better for your family.
Absolutely, because being vindictive and being angry, first of all, it's not going to help anything. It's only
No.
going to make me miserable. It's not going to
Hmm.
make my ex miserable if I'm still vindictive and angry. And listen, this is not even about me anymore. It's about my son's relationship with their father. And they are grown men now, as I stated, and it's up to them to nurture it in the way that works for them. And honestly, my ex-husband just called me a few weeks ago because unfortunately a hometown friend had passed. And he is a current partner, never knew of this person. And so he knew that I would know of him. And he just wanted to tell me and let me know. And he offered for us to like do something together with it. And I wish him no ill will. I like I said, I would pray that he would stop drinking tomorrow and able to save these last 20, 30 years of his life and has an incredible life, as a father and as a grandfather, and show up at my son's wedding in a year or two whenever they decide, bright eyed and bushy
Yeah.
tail. That would be like, I think the best gift that he could ever give my son. And I want that for him. But as you know, James, it's like he's got to want
He's
that
got
for
to
him.
want. He's got to want that. Yeah, he's got to want that end
Yeah.
result as well. He's got to want to be that person, and
Yeah.
he's got to want. He's got to want to be. He's got to want to be that person more than he wants to drink. And
Exactly.
sometimes that's just a tough situation to be in.
Mhm.
When you're not ready. You're not ready to admit those things to yourself. Um,
Yeah.
so I think we've covered a lot about your life and all that. Let's talk about what you do with your coaching. Let's talk about some of the coaching stuff. What do what do you got going on with that?
Well, right now I am just strictly doing one-to-one coaching right now.
Mm,
And my message is really for all women and men who are struggling in an alcoholic relationship, that are just looking for some relief, from this relationship. Because we go to Al-Anon in therapy because we're searching for an answer, and we
mm,
can't get the answer. And sometimes we can, and sometimes we can't get the answer there. And so this is just another resource for people to go to feel understood and actually get some steps to take to move them in the direction that they want to go. Often people think that when they come see me, it's like a matter of like, I'm going to say, well, leave him or you should stay. Like, that's not my decision. Everybody has to
Mm-hmm.
make their own decision in life, and everybody has autonomy over themselves. My goal is really, if you want to stay, I have a current client right now. She's 40 years into this relationship. Her husband treats her, by her own word, terribly, but she wants to stay. I'm not going to tell her to leave. We are going to find ways that she can cope so she feels more empowered in that relationship, so that she can get the support that she needs, so that she can build a network and a life outside of him. And also work on some of the detachment that we kind of alluded to of that's him. You know, she can still love him after 40 years. And I know that she does, but she doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to like what he's doing, and
Mm-hmm.
she can still do it. So
Yeah.
how do you separate those behaviors from the person and love them, but still be able to move on without feeling anger, resentment, or contempt? And that's basically what I do. I just want to empower women and men to feel stronger and just know that they don't. I think too often we feel like we have to endure this. Like there's like I took a vow, or I promised I would stay in this relationship,
For better, for
and that,
worse, till
and
death
for
do us
better or
part.
for
Yeah.
worse. And this is it. This is as good as it's going to get. I'm going to have to just figure it out, which is why we go to Al-Anon therapy, because we don't want to separate. We love
Mm.
these people, but we can't deal with these people anymore. So how do we
Yeah.
deal with them? And so we deal with them by becoming stronger and confident and rebuilding our self-esteem and our self-worth. And from that place, then you get to decide what you want to do with your rest of your life. Do you want it to be till death do you part, or do you want to part? It's totally up to you.
Nice. Well, yes. I mean, honestly, that is. It
Excuse me.
sounds like like you're really just giving people the tools that they need to survive the situation they're in and make the decision. Like you said, you can't tell somebody, I can't tell you to leave the person you love, but I can help you live in that situation and live in that space. That's interesting because, I mean, most people, you go to a therapist and, it's like, well, should I go? Should I stay? And then you figure it out and then you split or whatever. But you're like at least giving some tools and some things that are helpful to the person in the situation. So like you said, the woman with 40 years, I mean,
Mhm.
you can teach her how to love herself and be happy in
Mhm.
herself and do for herself and love
Mhm.
him, but don't love the things that he's doing or love the drink that
Yeah.
he's, when he's on the
Yeah.
drink.
Yeah.
That's him. That's him. He can do that fine.
Mhm.
He's not happy with something.
Right.
That's great that you're teaching people these skills. Where can people find you on social media? What social medias do you have for people to reach you?
Well, I make it really easy for everyone. My website is Deanna, DEA, two N's, NNA, Marie, lifecoaching.com. And you can go to my website. I actually have a new freebie that I just created called Creating Unbreakable Boundaries, because that's a big issue for a lot of women and men in alcoholic relationships, or really in any type of relationship. And they can download that free there. If you want to find me on Instagram, I'm just at Deanna Marie Life Coaching. You want to find me on Facebook, Deanna Marie Life Coaching. So facebook.com/Deanna Marie Life Coaching. So you can find me there. You can also listen to me on some other podcasts that are on my website that I've been interviewed in. So you want to hear more of these types of conversations I've had in the past. And if all of this resonates with you, if it moves for you and you just want to really feel empowered, I would invite you to book a call with me, which is on my website. It's in the upper right hand. And let's just have a conversation. There is no obligation. It's free. It's an hour conversation about the situation you're in and where you want to go. And then you get to decide from there. So that's where you can find me. And those are all my socials. And
Oh, that's
send me a
amazing.
DM if you ever have. Always send me a DM on Instagram and on Facebook. If you have a question, I will answer. I promise. So go ahead.
Honestly, I love it that you're so accessible and that you're really doing the work and you're helping the people. That's the same for me. Like I always say, if people are wanting to get in touch with me because of the podcast or the stuff I do with the recovery, just feel free to shoot me a DM, just find me on
Yeah.
socials and shoot me a message. I'll do my best to help, or I'll do
Yeah.
my best to put you in contact with some people. Now that I have this podcast, I've made some connections, which,
Yeah.
I can use to be helpful to other people, in doing this, which is, really beneficial for my recovery, is that I can offer this stuff to other people. So, um,
Absolutely. And that's why, and I appreciate being on here because our two worlds are crossing. Like I
mhm,
get a lot of people sometimes who are dealing with addiction and just don't know how to. I
mhm,
can provide those resources to people too. And that's the beauty of this because in my opinion, and I know I'm a little biased, that the partners and the family members of alcoholics are the underserved in this, are totally underserved in the community. And I just want to be here to serve them and help them. And like I said, after 20 years of looking for being out of that relationship and going into a life coaching business and looking to see what new competition was out there and finding out there isn't any, I was like blown away. And
yeah,
so I want to be there for these people just to know somebody understands you. You don't have, if you don't want to tell your girlfriend, which is what I didn't do for the longest time, talk to me about it. If you don't want to tell your family, if you're worried about what society's going to think, just reach out to me. I get it. I
yeah,
understand. If you don't know what to do, I can guide you. You can do this. You can create change no matter what direction you go in your relationship.
absolutely. And I think it's really important, for my podcast and my listeners, that we have perspective from
Mhm.
all different directions. I've been wanting to, I've had a lot of people that share their stories about addiction and recovery, but I'm trying to bring more people on for a different perspective because,
Mhm.
you know, our recovery is our story, it's our journey, but there are other people involved in your story. You know,
Yes.
there's your mom and your dad and your brother and your sister. You affected them in a
Mhm.
way. So I want to bring family members on. I want to do, partners of, that's why I was so
Mhm.
excited that I got your
Mhm.
message and I was like, oh, this is such a great insight because
Mhm.
you're giving such a different perspective that an alcoholic or an addict can look at
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
hear somebody else's point of view. You can hear, like, this is what happens in these relationships, and these are the struggles of the people who are in love with people who have an addiction, and these are the stories that they go through, and these are the struggles they go through.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that we've had this conversation, that we can get this stuff out there, and that the people can hear it, and hopefully it resonates. It
Mhm.
resonates with people, and that they reach out for help to you or to myself, and I can put them in touch with you, or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. Um, so before we close, I usually ask, because I'm usually dealing with people in recovery, but I
Mhm.
usually ask, what three things do you need in your recovery? And I'm going to ask you, what three things did you need to 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 start your journey leaving? Like the three things that you needed to get through that situation.
Okay. Since this is a new question, I would say um, belief in myself, support that I need from friends, family, get support, and really trust yourself in the process because you are always going in the direction you're supposed to.
You know what? I love those answers. Those are great answers. I
Thank
really do. I love those answers. Those are really good answers. And I think
you.
the listeners, if you take anything away from this, is take it that you trust your gut,
Mhm.
trust yourself, trust and
Yeah.
believe in yourself, and
Yeah.
Yeah. And be strong. Be
And
strong
be
and get it.
strong.
You can, yeah. Be strong and you can get through it.
We are all so capable to do much more than we even think we are. And until you're,
Absolutely.
crossing that in that journey, like for you with your fighting your addiction, and for me, being in this relationship and then being on my own as a single mom, it's
Mm,
like you you will rise up to the occasion because there's nobody else. As Mel Robbins always says, and I'm sure maybe you do know or don't, no one's coming for you. No one's
yeah.
coming for you. So do it yourself. You can do it.
Absolutely. You can do it. It's
Yeah.
proof positive. You got two people, lived experience, different lived
Yes.
experience, and both of us have done it. We both got
Yeah.
through, we're up to the other side, and now we're
Yeah.
just sharing, we're helping, giving
Yeah.
back, as you will. Deanna, I thank you for coming on. I thank you for sharing your story, being open and honest with us, and hopefully this podcast resonates with I imagine it's going to resonate with so many people. So thank you again for your time, and I appreciate it. And just thank you for everything.
No, thank you for inviting me on. And I'm really happy I had this opportunity for those who are struggling with addiction to really see, to have a window into what's really going on in their
Mm,
partner's world and how they're feeling affected. And if I can say anything to the listeners who are struggling with addiction, like, we know you are a beautiful person. We wouldn't be with you if we didn't see your beauty. And all we really want is you to see that for yourself. And so you can be the best person you can be for you and then for the world.
I that is the best way we could end this. I think with that statement.
All right. Well, thanks again, James.